Hello and welcome. My name is Maddie, and this is the next episode of Vocation. Once again, I'm very pleased to announce I'm joined by historian, author, and the one and only, the great Ralph Ellis. And so I believe today we're going to be speaking a bit about Scota, which is one of your other books, Ralph. Can you give us a wee bit of an introduction to what we might be chatting about today, if that sounds all right?
Yeah, good to be back with you again, Matty. Yes, we're talking about Scota this time. This came about because of my research into the Amarna family, Amarna family of Akhenaton and Nefertiti. And as a side issue on this, I discovered that they were mentioned in Scottish history. So that was interesting, and it sort of deserved a second glance, a bit more research on that side of it. And I'm glad I did, because somehow Scottish history preserved more information, or different information, you might say, than the standard Egyptian history.
Strange.
So, yeah, because they had alternate sources, because this was written in the 14th century by Walter Bower and Jonathan Dunn up in Scotland. And they were writing this as a declaration of independence. Very similar to the American one, because they wanted independence from England. And so as a part of that, they wanted the history of Scotland to show that they were an independent, ancient people, etc. And so they wrote this history of Scotland, which is called Scotichronicon. And there we have, that's my book, Scota, the Egyptian Queen of the Scots. And on the front there, you see an image of Scotichronicon. So this is the original Chronicle of the Scots by Walter Bower and Jonathan Dunn, 14th century. And that's what they penned as a part of their Declaration of Independence. And you can see a little picture down the bottom there, how they envisaged them coming across from Egypt, because the whole premise of Scotichronicon is that the Scots came from Egypt. And this is why, it dovetailed into my research on the Armana Dynasty, because not only came from Egypt, it is not given exactly, but they give a chronology of Egypt, which has come from Manetho. So whoever was compiling this, these two guys up in Scotland in the 14th century, they had a copy of Manetho, who's the Egyptian historian. And it's obviously a slightly different copy of Manetho, because remember, we don't have Manetho's manuscript. We only have versions that have come to us by Africanus and Josephus. So we've got copies of copies, and we don't know, obviously, where the copy for Scotichronicon came from. But it's slightly different to the ones that I've read, anyway, from the other two historians. And if you read through that chronology it gives of the pharaohs of Egypt, the area that they are homing in on is quite obviously, and we'll look at the names in a minute, it's the Armana Dynasty of Akhenaton and Nefertiti. And they're saying that there was an exile out of Egypt, and they came to Scotland. And it just so happens, of course, that out of, Egypt is a very stable place. Out of all of the history of Egypt, there are very few times when we know there was an exodus out of Egypt. We had the Great Exodus we've been talking about before, the Hyksos Israelite Exodus coming out of Egypt, 1570 BC. And then we have the Armana Dynasty, because I don't believe Akhenaton and Nefertiti died in Amarna. There's no evidence for that. They went on an exodus out of Egypt. We don't know exactly where they went to. And then the next pharaoh, bar two, was Ay, and he disappears from the record. And from the chronology in Scotichronicon, it looks like the pharaoh that went on an exodus was Pharaoh Ay. And we'll look at his genealogy in a minute. He was related to the Armana Dynasty, of course. He became the pharaoh after Tutankhamun. And so they've chosen, out of all of the history of Egypt, they have chosen a time when there could have been an exodus out of Egypt, which is interesting. How did they know that it was quite possible that there was an exodus out of Egypt at this very time? We're talking sort of 1320 odd BC here, the Armana Dynasty. And so they've chosen just the right time when a pharaoh could have been kicked out of Egypt. And that was Pharaoh Ay, I believe. And that's what they're talking about. This is why it's so interesting. This is why it's so connected with all of the other information I've been looking at, because I've already looked at Akhenaton and Nefertiti as being Adam and Eve. We've already been through that in a previous video. So they're intimately connected with the Old Testament biblical story. Now they're intimately connected with Scottish history. It's all sort of connecting up.
Yeah.
And they call they don't say Pharaoh Ay, of course, in this book. They give the king and the queen fleeing out of Egypt as being Queen Scota and King Gaithalos. And I go through those names looking at why they were called that. Gaithalos, I'm not going to explain it here because it's too complex. It's linked to the name for Caesar. Caesar was not just a name for Julius Caesar. Caesar was used in Persia as a name, as a title, before it went to, before it was picked up by Caesar. And it's a generic name, basically meaning the king. And so Gaithalos is really just a title meaning the king. So we don't really have his name as such. All we get is Gaithalos and Scota. And it is said that they went to Ireland and then to Scotland. And it is from Queen Scota that Scotland got its name. That's why it's called Scotland. Of course, if you read classical history, they say this is just a back formation. They've taken the name of Scotland and they've donated it to this imaginary, fictitious queen who was supposed to have gone to Scotland, not the other way around. I think possibly that it's actually correct that she was called Scota and she did indeed bestow her name upon Scotland, but not on Scotland, actually, on Ireland, because originally Ireland was called Scotia.
Right. I didn't know this. Is an Irishman?
So, yeah, this is an old lithograph from the 18th century.
18th century.
Just from an encyclopedia, an old encyclopedia.
Right.
And Ireland is called Scotia, whereas Scotland was called Hibernia. But of course, we get Hibernia for Scotland. Iberia is Spain. So Scotland and Spain have the same name. But Iberia, this name Iberia, is supposed to have come from the son of Queen Scota, who was called Heber. Heber and Hymek were the two sons. And that just very nicely translates in Egyptian. Remember, this is two Scottish people in the 14th century writing this. Heber and Hymek translate in Egyptian as river and sea. So, yeah, did they know Egyptian? Were they copying from ancient texts? Because these refugees out of Egypt were supposed to have gone to Spain first. That's why Spain has the name Iberia. So they say in Scotichronicon. That's where they got the name from. So, yeah, that's the basic outline of Scotichronicon. that this royal family went from Egypt. They were kicked out of Egypt. They went to Spain. They were there for a few generations, and then they went around or across and up to Ireland. And then for a few generations more, they then went to Scotland. So, yeah, fairly complex history, probably running over several hundred years before they got to Scotland. But even so, that's very early. You know, if they got to Scotland in the 9th century BC, that's still very early. That's before, you know, written history in Ireland and Scotland. So we wouldn't have any written history of this arrival of these people when they came to Britannia, Greater Britannia. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's the outline.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned what the primary sources that the Scottish chroniclers were writing from was Manetho. You'd mentioned we come across him before in Josephus Flavius' works. He was quoting from him. Was he an Egyptian historian in the sense that he was from Egypt, or was he a Greek or something that wrote about Egypt?
Well, he would have been Greco-Egyptian because he was 3rd century BC when Egypt was Greek. So I'd imagine he would have spoken Greek and Egyptian. But he did speak Egyptian. As far as we know, he spoke Egyptian. And that's an advantage because then he had access to records, of course, that we don't have. And he would have probably better translations than we have. When we make translations, even from the Old Testament, but certainly from Egypt, you have to wonder sometimes if those translations are correct. Because every word has 2 or 3 meanings. And if you attach the wrong meaning to it, then you've bastardized the meaning of the text. And this happens time and time again in the Old Testament. What I've tried to do in my book, I don't have a copy here, do I? I've got a book on the Amarna family, Eden in Egypt, it's called. And what I tried to do there in one of the chapters in that book was to go back into the Egyptian and retranslate the Torah out of Egyptian. Because one of my theses is that Hebrew is a daughter language of ancient Egyptian. Because there are many, many similarities between these 2 languages. And you'll just have to excuse me 1 minute while I look for a book. So one of my theses in 2 or 3 of my books, but certainly in Eden in Egypt, is that Hebrew is a daughter language of Egyptian. And that was backed up by all the research I'd been doing, of course, looking at all of these dynasties. And then I found this one, which I think has the worst title ever of any book. It says Semitic words in Egyptian texts of the New Kingdom and 3rd Intermediate period. That is rather suppositional. It is presuming that Hebrew has gone down into Egypt and influenced Egyptian. No, it's the other way around. Who was the dominant culture here? Who was the dominant language in this region? You know, by all accounts, and even from my accounts, the Israelites were strangers in Egypt. They had gone down into Egypt. And if you go down into another country, you normally learn the language of that country. Joseph was prime minister of all of Egypt. What language did he speak? He spoke Egyptian, of course. Moses was their chief army commander. What language did he speak? He spoke Egyptian. So this should really say Egyptian words in Semitic. It's the other way around. It was the Israelites were borrowing, because they spoke Egyptian, they were borrowing Egyptian words. And so much so, well, here's the other ones. We've got Budge, which is hieroglyphic dictionary, part 1, part 2. And I mean, absolutely full of hieroglyphics. But as you look through this, you'll find that, like 20% of them are Hebrew, or, they have a Hebrew equivalent. And so I went, in one of my books, I made my own dictionary pointing out the similarities between Hebrew and Egyptian, and then went back to the Old Testament for the first, few chapters. No, not even chapters. The first, 50 pages or so, and took it back into the Egyptian. Because if Hebrew is Egyptian, then those Hebrew words you can take back into the Egyptian and see what the Egyptian translation would be. And sometimes it was slightly different. And so you come up with a similar story, but slightly different, which was interesting. It's worth having a read. It's in my book, Eden in Egypt.
Yeah, we'll leave a link.
So, yes, we have all of these links between Hebrew and Egyptian. It's
unbelievable the depth of research you've done into these things. I see some nonsense comments. Then you're out here creating your own dictionary, going through these languages. It's unreal.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not a big dictionary. It's got about 400 words in it or something. There is a significant similarity between these two languages, and therefore Arabic again is a daughter language of Hebrew. So Hebrew, Aramaic, and Arabic are all Egyptian. They even sound like it. If you hear Hebrew being spoken, it has that guttural sort of sound of ancient Egyptian. They even sort of sound the same as well. So I think ancient Egyptian has survived. I mean that's fairly logical, isn't it? I mean, you listen to English. Half of English is Latin. So although nobody speaks Latin anymore, it survived. It survived within English. If you look at English, it's like 1/3 Latin, 1/3 Dutch, and 1/3 Norman French. Norman French is Latin anyway. So those are the main influences. And then, of course, we've got a smattering because we've picked up maybe 10% of Greek and 10% of Hebrew. Because remember, the Bible was hugely influential. And so within English, we pick up Hebrew words as well. So, all these languages together, you meld them together, and we end up with English. It's like when I was saying that Arthurian legend was mostly written in Aramaic. And people say, no, it's Welsh, it's Welsh. And you think, well, yes, but what's the most popular name in Wales? It's Davy Jones, which is Aramaic. David is Aramaic. Jones is Aramaic. These two Aramaic words are the most popular name in the whole of Wales. So, you can see the links. And Welsh is like that as well. I mean, I really know very little Welsh, but for Arthurian legend, I had to look up a few Welsh words. And every word I looked up was Latin.
I see.
Oh, okay. So the Welsh have picked up a load of Latin as well. None of these languages are just, monolithic creations from nothing. They've all borrowed, of course, as you might expect. And so here we have the Amarna family. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. This seems to be one of the misunderstandings that people have, is that when you're looking at sort of ancient Egyptian and it's a hieroglyphic language, there's always going to be multiple interpretations of sort of each word or of each picture. How much does that get in the way of your research and of people's maybe pushback towards it? Because it's maybe just a differing opinion on the same picture or symbol of this hieroglyphic language.
It depends whether it's an obvious mistranslation. I mean, if you go through the Old Testament, even the New Testament, there are obvious references to the zodiac. But when it's being translated into English, you will never see that it's translated as being the zodiac. They always translate it as something else. because having the zodiac in the biblical story was, especially during the Victorian era or before, was not really acceptable. So they translated it in a different fashion. But when it's so obvious that they're talking about the zodiac, it must be a mistranslation. The same happens in Egyptian because, the translators have a viewpoint, and that's what comes out in their translation. They don't necessarily know that the Hyksos were the Israelites, and therefore they're not going to mention Israelites. Similarities between the Hyksos and the Israelite Exodus, and so that can create mistranslations. So it really needs a slightly different viewpoint sometimes to understand that, they were talking about cosmic and stellar events and so on and things of that nature, not necessarily humble artisan or agricultural topics. They were talking about the heavens above, like we've been talking about when we were talking about Gilgamesh. How did they not see that Gilgamesh was Orion when it's so obvious from the text that that's what they were talking about, that they're not talking about a king? Well, there may have been a king because all the kings were incarnations of the gods, of course. But the text of Gilgamesh is obviously talking about Orion killing the bull of heaven in the heavens above. But unless your translator knows that Orion is sitting next to Taurus in the night sky, they're not going to translate it in that fashion. So we're down to the skills of the translators. That they're only as good as the knowledge they have. So you do get mistranslations. This is the Amarna family. We're not going to go through this in any detail because we've done it in the previous talk. Just pointing out that they were the naked lovebirds in the Garden of Eden. Their god was called the Aten or the Eton. We'll see this in a minute when we go through the hieroglyphs. So on the left, we've got Akhenaton, and he's naked in the Garden of Eden. The middle one is Nefertiti, Queen of Egypt, naked in the garden and depicted naked wherever this statue was set up, somewhere in Amarna, depicted as being naked in the Garden of Eden. And then the third one is one of the daughters, we don't know who. Maybe even Queen Scota, Ankhesenamun, we don't know. But anyway, she's portrayed as nearly naked. She's got like a diaphanous robe on that leaves nothing to the imagination. So this was the naked family in the Garden of Eden, which is one of the reasons why I connected them with Adam and Eve, who are also the naked lovebirds in the Garden of Eden. This is Akhenaton with his strange features. We've been through that before.
Yeah, this androgynous look. Yeah.
Yes. The alien grey.
Yeah.
Yes, with his almond eyes and his triangular face and everything else. Yeah, all very interesting. This are his cartouches, since we're talking about Egyptian hieroglyphs. So this is Akhenaton. The god name always comes last, we think. So we start in the middle. This is this sieve is a k. So N, and then Itna. So this is the god name on the left side, the Aten, which is the Aten. It's normally pronounced as the Aten, but in truth, this reglyph is more like an E sometimes, or perhaps even an I. So you could say Iten or Eton. Not necessarily, it's not a hard A. There are different characters for that. So it's Akhenaton, maybe, from the Garden of Eden. And sometimes they use a D here as well. So sometimes it's Eden instead of Eton. There are two spellings to the Aten. And then these are some of the other names. Each pharaoh had at least 5 names. So this is some of the other ones. We've got Kepa is the beetle, the sun beetle. So Neferkepera, this is the Neferglyph, as in Nefertiti. Neferkepera, again, the god name comes last. And then we've got, what's this one? This is the N, the water glyph is N. Ui, N, and then Ra. Ra being obviously the sun god. So that's the cartouches of Akhenaton. But I think, that the king who was kicked out of Egypt was actually Pharaoh Ay. And this is Ay, and he was the pharaoh after Tutankhamun. And we'll look at his genealogy in a minute. Here, he's officiating at the death of Tutankhamun. So Tutankhamun's on the left. He's been chopped out of this image here. That duty is normally the next pharaoh to officiate at the death of the previous pharaoh. It's normally the son is officiating at the death of the last pharaoh. Here, it's I. And I think he's doing that because he was the father of Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun is of unknown ancestry. It's debated. So I've got I as over here, A-Y-E. This is Pharaoh I. I have them. None of this is fixed in stone. There are many interpretations of this. So I've got them as being the son of Yuya and Tuyu. Now, these are very famous, very influential administrators within the Amarna regime. They were the progenitors, in fact, of the Amarna regime, was Yuya and Tuyu. And they're I think I've got an image of it later. Their mummies are in the Cairo Museum. So we actually have their burials. And their children were I and Tia, who was the wife of Amenhotep III, from whom we get Amenhotep IV, who is Akhenaton. So one of their daughters was the mother of Akhenaton. Now, for Nefertiti, I've put her down as a daughter of Ay, because she's closely related, but not a sister of Akhenaton. So I've given Nefertiti as being a daughter of Ay. And here she is. This is Nefertiti. And the daughters of, because Akhenaton only had 6 daughters, no sons, which is a good reason to suspect that Tutankhamun was not a son of Akhenaton, despite what Zahi Hawass likes to say. It's highly unlikely that Tutankhamun was a son of Akhenaton. Otherwise, he would have acknowledged that. He never acknowledged Tutankhamun as being his son, or any sons whatsoever. So these are the daughters of Akhenaton, and we've got all their names here. Meritaten, Meketaten, and the one we're looking for here really is Ankhesenamun, as she's known in the classical books. But her name, of course, originally was Ankhesenamun, because the god name she was using would have been the Aten.
Yes.
Now, when she married Tutankhamun, she had to change her name because the Aten had been proscribed at that point, been deleted from history. And so she changed her name to Ankhesenamun, using the god Amun name. And this, I think, is Scota.
Right.
And she had a complicated life. She married Smenkara. Smenkara was probably her uncle. Then she married Tutankhamun, who was also her uncle. And then she married Ay, who would have been her great uncle.
Right.
Oh, before that, I think she married her father as well. She married Akhenaton as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, a complex marriage life, you might say.
Simply family dynamics there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like to keep it in the family.
That's it. These ginger dynasties.
Yeah, keeps the dynasty nice and tight, keeps the money and the power and the influence in the dynasty. That's what they were all doing. That's what we've been seeing in the New Testament when we were looking at that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the two protagonists in this story, I think, are Ankhesenamun and Ay, when she married Ay. So obviously she married Tutankhamun. She is the lady on the back of the chair when you see Tutankhamun and his wife on the back of the royal throne. That's her. That's Ankhesenamun. Tutankhamun died early, of course, after only a few years. And I came running back to marry Ankhesenamun because he wanted to change the administration back to the Arten again. So what happened is we had the Arten, we had Akhenaton and the Amarna dynasty controlling Egypt, with the god being the Arten, all of the old gods of Egypt being cut out from all of the temples being closed down, persecution of all of the old priests, changing the whole religious aspect of Egypt completely to the Arten, the first monotheism that we really know of. And then Akhenaton fell foul of the regime. He was kicked out. That's why I think that Akhenaton went on an exodus rather than just being killed, because there's no evidence for his death in Amarna. I don't believe KV-55, for instance, is Akhenaton. I think he was pushed out on an exodus. And they went back to the old ways. They opened the temples again. They venerated the old gods again under Tutankhamun. Tutankhamun was obviously an Artenist, but he was only a kid, so he was forced into the old religion and the old ways. And that's why Ankhesenamun had to change her name to Ankhesenamun. And so we had a number of years of Tutankhamun, not very many years, and he died early. And then I came running back in again to change it all back to the Arten once more, to go back to the same regime as Akhenaton, because he was intimately linked to that family. He was their, what did they call him? He was a chief spy master. He was called something like the eyes in every room or something. He was
right. Yeah.
He was the secret police. He was the army commander, all that sort of stuff. So he was very closely linked to this dynasty. During the time of Tutankhamun, when they went back to the old ways, I think I went to Greece. And this is why we have the story of Danas going to Argos. Danas has the same name as I, which I explain in my book. So I think the story of Danas, who was supposed to be a king of Egypt, Danas going to Argos, which is Greece, I think that is a story about I being kicked out during the rule of Tutankhamun and having to go into exile in Greece. Remember, at this time, this is like 1320 BC, there was no Greece. This was just, well, it wouldn't be barren land. There would be people there, but there would be no civilization that we know of. It would be a proto-civilization. Bronze Age sort of civilization in Greece, which would be easy to manipulate and to dominate, having come from Egypt, who was, the greatest technology and kingdom of the Eastern Mediterranean at that time. And it's quite possible that he might have set up Greece as we know it. We'll see some links to Greece in a minute. It's quite possible that he might have set up something like Sparta, because we know that Sparta was an invading elite who came into southern Greece and dominated the people there and turned them into slaves to the Spartans. Mm-hmm. So the Helots were just a slave population, the native population who were turned into slaves, and they were dominated by the Spartans because the Spartans had come in from elsewhere.
I see.
Rather like possibly I might have done when he went to Greece. So anyway, that's the background to Ay. He came running back as soon as he heard that Tutankhamun had died. He came running back and re-established the Aten as the god of Egypt. Didn't last very long though. So this is Ay. And so we've got, where do we start? Probably here. This is Ay. So we've got E-E-E. Now, how do you pronounce that? So there are many versions of this pronunciation. Most people say I-E, I, because it's just like 3 E's in a row.
Yes.
I.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's that's his name. And then this bit is Itefneter. So Itef, and then the god flag is Neter. So the symbol for God is a flag. Some say it's an axe, because if you go to Minoan Crete, the image for a god in I was going to say Cyprus, in Crete, is an axe. So some people say that this is an axe, but if you look at the axes in Minoan Crete, they're not operational. They're not usable axes. They are images of axes. So maybe they're even images of flags. We don't know. So it's either a flag or an axe. In Rome, it became an axe. So if you look at a fasces, from which we derive the word fascist, when people bandy this word around without knowing what it means, a fascist is the authority under which people are controlled. And in Rome, it was an axe surrounded by 12 rods bound with red tape. Now, the 12 rods are the 12 tribes of Israel. So we have a definite link back to Israel and Egypt in the fasces of Rome. So when Rome went anywhere, they carried the fasces with them as a symbol of the authority of Rome. And in the center of the 12 rods was an axe. And quite obviously, the axe is, as it is here, it's a symbol of the god above. So that's Ay, and his other name here is Kepa. So Kepa is the beetle again. It's either Kepara or Keperura. The plural in Egyptian is U. So it could be Keperura. The 3 rods are just mean plural, basically. Ra being the symbol of the sun god, but it wouldn't be pronounced Ra because this is Amarna. So it would be Keperu Aten, not Ra. And then at the end here, we have Ear Mate. And that name links up with Danis, who went to Argos, who had the same name. Right. So there we go. That's the Armana Dynasty. But Ay was kicked out. This is an alternative version of the genealogy here. Again, we see Ay just up the top here. We have Nefertiti as being the daughter of Ay. That's debatable, but that's where I put her. Again, I've got Tutankhamun as being a son of Ay, because that's more logical than coming from Akhenaton. And here we have Ankhesenamun marrying Smenkhara, Tutankhamun, and then Ay. So it was, this is Ankhesenamun. Note these were all cone heads. So, from Indiana Jones, all of the South American royalty were cone heads. What was that? Something in the crystal skull, if you remember that one.
Right.
There are many cone heads if you go to Central South America. But the Armana Dynasty were also cone heads.
Right. Yeah.
So, and we think they were physically different as well. If you look at the mummy of Tutankhamun, it's not this pronounced, but Tutankhamun is a slight cone head. He's got a slight bulge on the back of his head. But Ankhesenamun, quite obviously, if this is drawn from or sculpted from life, she was very pronounced as a cone head.
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So there was something special about these dynasties.
Yeah.
They were cone heads and they were ginger. We'll see in a minute as well. They were ginger. So they were different from the rest of the population, quite possibly.
Where is this from?
Sorry,
Ralph. Where is this from, Ralph? Is this a sculpture or just a drawing, or?
This is a bust. Yeah, it's a sculpture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where's that bust from? Where did you find
it's
this?
from the Egyptian Museum.
It's from I see.
Yeah, from the Cairo Museum.
Yeah.
There are a few of them, and also they wore hats like this. If you look at Nefertiti when she wears the war hat and things of that nature, the hat looks like this skull. So you have to, because we don't have an image of Nefertiti with just her hair showing. What does this one have? You see she's wearing the hat, but the hat has the same bulge as the skull. So were these bulbous hats just covering up her conehead skull? I don't know. We don't have an image of Nefertiti without a hat on. So they may have been physically, genetically slightly different to the rest of the population. What's happened to the cone heads, I don't really know, because you don't really see cone heads in the modern population.
No.
Not that I've seen. Unless someone can show me some images of cone heads floating around. So I don't quite know what has happened to all of these cone heads from history. But they certainly did have them. I mean, if you look at the skulls from Central South America, they are pronounced cone heads with the actual skulls. Not just sculptures, but the actual original skulls. And interestingly, they don't have the same suture lines in the top of the skull either.
This is so fascinating.
Yeah, they're missing one of the suture lines that we normally have in our skulls.
And that's too short a time period for this to evolve out of, I imagine.
Yeah.
A couple of 1,000 years, you're not going to get a totally different shape ahead, This is really perplexing, this. Yeah,
I've not been too deeply into this, but it's, I'm sure other people have been looking at this in much more detail, but I looked at it because there it is, the Armana Dynasty had these, well, Akhenaton had the strange shape head as well, as we know, but all of the sculptures from Amarna are slightly odd, slightly different.
Something to look into there. Yeah.
This is her cartouche. This is her later cartouche. So this is the Ankh. The Ankh is the Egyptian cross. Ankhesenamun, the water glyph is N. So Ankhesen, and then this is the god name Amun. So Imna, Imun. Or Amen, if you want to pronounce it as Amen. That's how it used to be pronounced before someone changed it into Amun instead. So that's Ankhesenamun. That's her cartouche.
Yeah.
And yes, we've seen that already. That's the alternate. So Akhenaton had at least 3 wives that we know of. So Akhenaton married Nefertiti, Ipi, and then Kia. When I was talking about Adam and Eve being Akhenaton and Nefertiti, it's not Nefertiti, it's Kia. So Eve is not her name. She's it's something that sounds like Kia in the Hebrew. We've got Eve via the Greek, so it's a bastardized version of the Hebrew. Her original name is something like Kia. It sounds very close to Kia. So I think Adam and Eve is actually Akhenaton and Kia. Kia was known as his favorite wife, not Nefertiti. She was the more powerful, of course, whereas Kia was his favorite. She was known as the little monkey.
Right.
So she was obviously a bundle of fun.
Yeah. Very good. She would have been related as well, then, I imagine.
Oh yes. Yeah. Although
absolutely.
we don't have
genealogy.
We don't have her ancestry, so we don't know where she came from. But she was. She was possibly not a conehead, because they had a kiosk to Kia, just a little shrine, as it were, to Kia, out in one of the gardens at Amarna, and it had Kia in it. But then the kiosk was taken over by Ankhesenamun, and they redrew the head to have a conehead on the back of it. So they had to elongate the skull in the sculpture. So it seems likely that Kia didn't have a conehead, and then they amended it to make it look like the daughter of Akhenaton. So that was interesting.
Yeah.
But this is the family that was kicked out, because Ay disappears from the record very quickly, 4 years or something, and he's kicked out of Egypt. Now, in classical Egyptian history, there is no explanation. He just disappears. Presumed dead, whatever. But this is where Scotichronicon takes over the story. Both Scotichronicon and the Labor Gabala from Ireland, which is 6th century, so we're going back quite a long way here.
Wow.
They both have this story of these people coming out of Egypt. And apparently they were given 50 ships or something of that nature, and politely told to go. Otherwise, something worse could happen. So again, this was a controlled exodus. This wasn't a panicked exodus. They were allowed to make arrangements, take their belongings, take their people, their courtiers and their friends and families, and board the ships and go. So that, they might have had 6 months or more to arrange all of this. And they boarded their 50 ships and they sailed to the west. And so this would have been 1300 odd BC. Did they have the technology? Yeah, of course they did.
Yeah.
This is the this goes back even further. This is the Giza boat. So this is like 4,500 years old, this boat.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
No, sorry.
What's this boat famous for?
Yeah, sorry. Say again.
What's this boat famous for? Was this for moving like the bricks down the Nile, for building pyramids kind of stuff?
No,
or?
this is a ceremonial boat for transporting the pharaoh and the image of the god that was never used. So this one was packed away and buried underneath the pyramid, on the south side of the Great Pyramid. So there are 2 boat trenches down there, and disassembled, they packed these 2 boats into these trenches. And I think they were never used. They were brand new. But it gives you an idea of the technology they had at this time. This is Old Kingdom.
Wow. Yeah.
So, this is a long time ago. And this is this technology is good enough to go across the Mediterranean, put it that way.
Yeah.
This is a Nile cruiser, of course. What they used to do is they used to put fabric along this top of the these side planks. I'm trying to remember what they call it, but anyway, they put some fabric along the top to stop the waves coming over the top, to make it more seaworthy if you're going across the Mediterranean. But this is a perfectly seaworthy boat if you wanted to amend it slightly. We know they had boats that were capable, because this is the Ulster shipwreck. This is just off the coast of Turkey, just outside Bodrum. And this is in the museum at Bodrum. If you go to Bodrum, it's in the castle at Bodrum, so don't miss it out. It's there. It's well worth going to have a look. And this ship is of the right era. We know it's the right era because they had a finger ring, a gold ring of Nefertiti on board. So this ship is of the right era. It's 1300 odd BC. And this is what it would have looked like, a trading vessel. And you can see they've put these netting up on the side to stop the waves coming over the top, make it slightly more seaworthy. But this is interesting, this ship, because they say it was a trading vessel carrying all sorts of goods around the Mediterranean. I don't think so. I think this ship was carrying all of the equipment you would need to set up a new civilization in a new land. If you're going on an exodus, you need to take all the equipment you need to survive for the next 5 years, 10 years in a new land. So you need everything that you would normally need to make a civilization. And this ship had everything. So it has ingots down here, copper ingots. It's got glass ingots. It has all sorts of luxury products. It has hooks. It has fish, like fish hooks. It has ostrich eggs. It has all sorts of things that you would normally need in order to survive in a new land. So it has things like this. The top one here is ingots of copper. And then these ones here are ingots of glass. That to me is not trade, because you don't make much money out of selling a glass ingot. You make the money out of making a goblet and selling the goblet. So if you wanted to trade glass, you would take the finished product from a place like Egypt, which knew how to make these very high-tech products. Exporting the raw material is not profitable. Why bother doing that? However, if you're going to a new land to set up a new civilization, if you are Pharaoh Ay on his way because you've been kicked out of Egypt to set up a new civilization, you would need ingots of glass. These are the raw materials you would need for your new civilization. So I think that's what this ship was doing. And this was just off the coast of Greece. Of course, Pharaoh Ay went to Greece before he went westwards towards Spain and Ireland. Again, this is all the stuff they found on this boat. This is the Ulster shipwreck. And you've got gold here. Gold being used as money. They used to chop up pieces of gold and just use it as money. They didn't have any coinage. There was no such thing as coinage. Gold goblets, all sorts of things here. Lots of these necklaces. Have a look at this, because we find this in Ireland as well, these necklaces. These are faience necklaces. Faience is a type of glass. So these are man-made, these necklaces. And they're typical of Egypt. That's where they come from.
Wow, yeah.
And they were supposed to have landed in Spain. So they were kicked out of Egypt. They sailed to the west. And apparently they landed here, which is the Ebro Peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
And Ebro, this is the river Ebro. Ebro is the name of the son of Queen Scota.
Right. Yeah.
Again, they say this is a back formation, that, they've named the sun after the river, but perhaps the river is named after the sun.
I see.
The interesting thing here is that they managed to find the only other place in the whole of the Mediterranean basin where we have a delta. So they came from the Nile Delta, and they went to the Ebro Delta. And I don't know of any other delta regions in the Mediterranean. So the farmers in the delta of Egypt would have known exactly how to farm this area here, because this is a delta region. It looks like a ghostly apparition on this satellite.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Video. But anyway, that is, if we look at it in a map, there it is. Delta de Libra. It's a flat delta region, the same as northern Egypt is. Well worth visiting. It's a nice place. Amposta's quite a nice town. So I was there for about 4 days, pottering around, having a look at it.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
looking for some Egyptian connections when you were there. Was that the purpose?
But the problem is now we run off the end of history and we start looking at mythology, because this would be a new people in a new land with limited resources, who could not build pyramids and temples and things of this nature that are going to last for thousands of years. And so there's going to be very little trace of them in these lands. And that's why we end up with mythology and not with, although we do have some hard artifacts. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But it's much harder for them to leave a trace in the land than an established civilization can. Because apparently they weren't in the Ebro Delta very long, because they were attacked. Every day they were attacked by the locals, and although they won every battle, they always lost a few people. And they didn't have any people to lose. I mean, if you think about it, 50 ships, you're only talking a maximum of about 1,000 people. We're not talking about a very big civilization here. And so it seems likely that they went, this is the Ebro here, they went initially to the Balearics, because the Balearics were uninhabited. So that was much more secure. So the Balearics are the popular resort towns of, we've got Minorca and Mallorca. People go there on holiday all the time. And they never go to see the old ruins there. There are quite a number of old ruins there that, the tourists never go to. And the first one, of course, is the Nevitas.
Right, yeah.
These are upturned boat tombs.
Right.
Now, if you're escaping by boat and you want shelter, the first thing you're going to do is bring a boat ashore, cut it in half, turn it upside down, and you've got some shelter.
Voila. Yeah.
And yes, indeed. And so maybe that became symbolic of the people, that they were connected to boats, because that's how they got there. And so they made their tombs into boat tombs.
Do you have a date for these?
These are Bronze Age, so they're the right sort of era.
Yeah.
We don't have exact dates for them, but they are Bronze Age. And of course, 1300 BC, we are in the Bronze Age now. And this is on Minorca. Rudimentary, but nevertheless, quite robust. It's lasted thousands of years there.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, of course, we have the same in Ireland. So this is the Dingle Peninsula in southern Ireland. And the interesting thing, it's not only the same shape, it's the frontage is the same size. So they're using the same I think they were using Egyptian royal cubits. It has the same width to them. Now, this is said to be 6th century AD.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no evidence for 6th century AD. They say it's 6th century AD because the back window seems to have an arch, a Roman type arch on it. But if you look at that lintel on the back window, I don't have a picture here, it's been recarved in later years. And I think it's been recarved to make it look like a Roman arch because it's made the lintel dangerously thin. It would have not been like that originally.
Mm.
So if we take that window out of this, there is no definite age for this.
Mm.
It could easily be something like Bronze Age, because these stones here will last. These are very hard. You don't even have to quarry these. They come out in nice little slabs anyway.
Mm.
Some sort of grit stone, but it's very tough. It's going to last an awful long time. And the corbelling at the top is exactly the same as these.
That's fascinating.
So there are some similarities. So we're looking at similarities now between where these people came from, which we know was this, Spanish type region, and where they eventually went to several generations later, which is Ireland and Scotland. And what they were doing on Minorca especially is they were making lots of round towers, truncated round towers. They didn't have tops on them. And nobody knows what these are. Some of them are like this. This is solid. So there's nothing in the middle of this. And this is quite large, this one. This one, again, on Minorca. No, that's Mallorca. That's on the south of Mallorca, the bigger island. This is just a round tower with no particular function. There's no interior to this. Sometimes you get just a hole in the top of it, sort of thing. So it's not livable. It's not for storing grain or anything of that nature. It's not really much of a lookout tower, is it?
No.
And you get several of these together. What are they for? Well, we have to come back to the old standby explanation. It's got to be religious, isn't it?
Yeah.
And yes, I think they were building round towers in the same way that the Egyptians would be building pyramids. Not triangles, but circular cylinders. The Edessans did the same. I think we looked at these before. The tombs of the Edessan royalty were truncated round towers, exactly the same as these. Slightly better made, of course, because they were made in the sort of Roman era. But nevertheless, they look exactly the same. So they could even be burials, but there's not much. Literally, some of them have a passageway, which is like 1 meter by 1 meter that goes in, and that's about it. So it's not much of a tomb if it was supposed to be a tomb. And if you go to Sardinia, where these people may have gone to as well, there are 6,000 of these on Sardinia. They're all over the place. These navitas, I think they call them there as well. One possible explanation for these is that they are plant pots. So this is the very famous Minoan ring from Crete. And what it has is images of round towers. Are these round towers at the edges here? And what we have coming out of the round tower is a sacred tree with some sort of nymph or goddess picking the fruits. You can see picking the fruits of the tree. So did they have a cult of the sacred tree? Because they did in Egypt. If you look into, say, Tanis going up into the Nile Delta and so on. So we're talking Tanis, we're talking 1000 BC sort of here. they had sacred groves, and they had these plots with holes for all of the trees. So they had a sacred grove with trees in it. If you look into the Old Testament, they had sacred trees which were covered in cloth. In fact, I think they still do that in somewhere. I've seen that somewhere in the East, where they have cloth hangings coming from the trees. And they have these sacred trees. And of course, they were always saying, you've got to cut down your sacred groves, because they all had sacred groves of trees. So trees have long been sacred in some forms of Judaism, and obviously on Minoan Crete. So yeah, and here's a boat down the bottom. You can see their boat. Very, very similar to the Egyptian boat here. You can see the steering oar on the back, and a little cabin, as it were, on the ship. Very typical of Minoan ships. They often look like this. So yes, so we have this cult of the round tower. Where else do we have round towers? Southern Ireland, of course. So these are the Irish forts, but they're not forts at all. These are huge. Internally, I'm just thinking 50 meters across or something. So they're quite large.
Yeah.
With only one gate. You can see the entrance gate down the bottom here on this one. On the other side here on this one is the entrance gate. So one very small entrance gate. Some people said these are fortified farms, but the entrance gate is not big enough to get a cow through. So it wouldn't, not going to be a very good farm.
Yeah.
Some people are saying these are fortresses. I don't think these are fortresses, because if you look at the interior has terraces.
Yeah.
That would make a terrible fortress, because whoever scales your walls can easily walk down anywhere around this wall. No, what it's got is terraces. You can see the steps here going up to that terrace, and then another step going up to that terrace. And all of these terraces are about half a meter wide. So this is pretty. OSA wouldn't like this. OSA is health and safety in America. Health and safety would have a fit about this. Literally, you're sitting on this shelf, which is only half a meter wide, looking down this precipitous drop to all of the people who would be below you sitting on these terraces.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, you could pack a load of people into it. Several hundred people. So I think these are actually theatres. And that changes the whole history of Southern Ireland, because if you're thinking of these in terms of a fortified farmhouse or a fortress, it means you've got a dangerous situation with a scared population making castles everywhere because they're being attacked every 2 minutes by marauding invaders or something. Well, if it's a theatre instead, suddenly you have a relatively open, wealthy population who are going to the theatre to see some sort of show, long before Rome invented theatres. I mean, these are supposed to be Bronze Age, pretty old. Wow. And that's what I think they are. They are theatres. And what do you get in the center of the theatre? Oh, you get a round tower.
I see.
So the very center of these, I think we can see it here. This is why they were doing some work on it, so it doesn't look so good here. Yeah. The very center of these big theatre enclosures is often a round tower. And that would make sense, because if you're down on Minorca or Mallorca, you can sit out with the round tower in front of you, and you can observe whatever the priesthood are doing on this round tower. And you can all sit there and cheer and clap and pray and whatever you're supposed to do, you know.
Yeah.
You can't do that in Southern Ireland. So it might look very nice here with these puffy clouds. This is my picture, so I was there.
I see.
But it was blowing a hoolie. We had 50-mile-an-hour winds whistling across. You cannot sit outside and have, sitting around a round tower and have a show in Southern Ireland. But inside this theatre, it was perfectly calm. There was no wind. It was beautiful. The sun was out. You could sit and sunbathe. It was absolutely tropical almost. So you can see perhaps why in Southern Ireland you would want to make this round tower around, this theatre around your round tower. But in Scotland, they're much more hardy. They just build them on they just build them on a hilltop. Why not? They don't care. They've got hairy legs and kilts, so what do they care?
Toughen them up.
If you go to Scotland, it's covered in brocks. And what are brocks? They are truncated round towers.
I see.
And some of them are quite big. If you go to the one on Skye, it's quite high. It's almost, because that one is relatively hollow. It's almost usable for storage or something of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
Again, they're saying it's a castle, but it's highly impractical as a castle. But you could use it for maybe grain storage or something of that nature. But they are huge, some of these brocks. So those are the sort of similarities we see. And if we want to see similarities with Egypt, we do have the Egyptian prince who was buried in Ireland. So this comes from just north of Newgrange. And I've forgotten the name of the place again, but they have some of these barrows, these tombs. And in the side of the barrow, not in the bottom of it, if I remember correctly, in the side of the barrow, they found a burial. And the young lad had an Egyptian necklace.
Unbelievable.
So they called him the Egyptian prince. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
So this shows that, at the very least, there was trade with, because these are fiance beads. These have come out of Egypt. Trading these artifacts all the way up to Ireland in the Bronze Age. This is quite early. And so there were trading links at the very least with Britannia, with Ireland, or Scotia as it was known.
I think there was the skull of a Barbary monkey, some sort of a monkey in North Africa, found as well nearby. It might be Navan, if I remember correctly, but I could be wrong there.
Yes, I seem to remember that as well. Yes.
Yeah.
So trading monkeys as well.
Yeah. There's also the old mythologies. I think there's other Egyptian royalty that are buried in Ireland. Is that correct? There's one at the Hill of Tara. Is that right?
Yeah, this is this one came from Tara. Yes, that's the place I was trying to think of. Yeah, the Egyptian prince came from Tara.
Yeah.
So that's all very interesting stuff. We can see links that you wouldn't necessarily think you would have, for Bronze Age going to Ireland. This is pretty early stuff. The one I'd like the most, and I find the most persuasive, is in the Armana Dynasty. And of course, you've got to remember that John of Verdun and Walter Boer have focused in on the Armana Dynasty. And this is the only dynasty in this sort of era where we could have had an exodus out of Egypt. And they've managed to pick just the right era to get an exodus. But in that same era, we had the presentation of torques. Torques are gold necklaces, which were used almost as money because they were used as presentations for favorite administrators. And this is Pharaoh Akhenaton and Nefertiti. Naked again. You can see they're naked. This is like
real exhibitionists.
The Queen of Queen of England, Queen of Britain, and the King in Buckingham Palace on the terrace at Buckingham Palace, naked, giving out awards to the Prime Minister, but all sitting naked on the balcony at Buckingham Palace.
That's funny.
Yeah. Okay, so the Armana Dynasty was, as we said before, was a bit of a hippie cult.
Yeah. Anything for
a
the
hippie
views.
commune. And you can see again, they all wear these extended
Elon.
helmets or hats or crowns, which could have concealed Akhenaton having a cone head as well, and the same for Nefertiti as well. And I think you can see even the children have cone heads in this as well. You can see the extended skull on the back of that. The flap going down is they were wearing a side lock, the same as Jews wear a side lock of hair. Of course, all of the children are wearing a side lock of hair here. But if I maybe zoom in, if I can zoom up that a little bit.
Yes. Yeah.
You can see the children have pronounced cone heads there.
This elongated skull thing I find so fascinating. I've came across it somewhere else in a few different videos and books and whatnot. You'd mentioned South America. There was a couple of other places where I've seen them. It's just been spliced together of these different skulls and different burials that they've found them. But there's something weird going on there more than we know. I think, but we'll leave that to speculation for now. But
it's worth someone investigating further. I'm sure there might be a book on this already that I've not read, because there's only so much you can actually read and look
Sounds
at.
like you've done enough for Alpha.
But the bit I was homing in on here was the torques. We call these torques. They're just gold necklaces.
Yeah.
And here is Ay. So this is Akhenaton. I don't have the original for this. This is Akhenaton giving the award to Ay. And this is Ay receiving the award. So he's being given these torques, and he's got all of these torques, and this is his wife as well, being given these torques by Akhenaton. So he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, and she's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I think there. That's how you reward your subordinates for being good subordinates. They are giving these golden torques. So these golden torques are effectively money, even though they didn't have money in this era. And when we go to Ireland, what do we find? We find golden torques. This is from the Dublin Museum. Now, these are very early. These are, again, thought to be Bronze Age. But how do you get so much gold in Ireland? Now, from all of my research, there is not a great deal of gold in Ireland. There was no gold industry in the Bronze Age in Ireland. So this has to be an import. But what on earth in the Bronze Age was Ireland exporting in order to trade for such high value products as a golden torque?
Yeah.
I mean, these are supremely expensive in the ancient world.
This is not a few sheep and cows.
For that. What did Ireland produce? Ireland produced, the same as it does today. It's mostly sort of agricultural products.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's no high-tech ancient Ireland that could be exporting goods back down to the Mediterranean, wherever these have come from. However, if Ay or his descendants came out of Egypt, what they would take with them is hordes and hordes of gold, because they would know it's usable as money. And so when they moved from the Ebro River and they eventually sailed round and went to Ireland in a few generations' time, they may well have had some gold still remaining when they set up their new civilization in Ireland.
Do you have any speculation of why you think they left Spain and went to Ireland? Why Ireland of all places? Why not?
Because it says they were attacked every day.
Why not go to the rest of the mainland? Head over to France?
They had been told that Ireland was uninhabited.
Okay, I
or
see.
at least if it was inhabited, it did not have a civilization there. It did not have a people that could resist their landing there and living there. So if it had a population, it was a rudimentary population of hunter-gatherers sort of thing. There was no civilization. And therefore they could dominate those people and live in that land. Whereas in Spain, they were being continuously attacked, is what it says in Scotichronicon. That's what it actually says. They were continuously losing population in all of these battles with the locals, and they didn't have any population to lose. They only started with 1,000 people, so they had nobody to lose. And so they decided to go elsewhere. So we don't know quite how quickly they moved to Ireland, but you can imagine in a generation or two that they moved on. We also don't know which way they went to Ireland. Did they go across Spain and go to the north of Spain and get ships from there? Did they go through the Basque country? Because the Basques are a very peculiar, separate population. Or did they sail around the whole of Iberia and then go up, the Atlantic coast? That we don't know either. But they landed in Dingle. That's where Queen Scota is supposed to be buried. There's supposed to be a tomb there of Queen Scota. I don't think that would have happened because this would have been a generation or two afterwards. And if you look at the tomb of Queen Scota, it looks like, to me, a natural outcrop of rock. It doesn't look like a tomb. But anyway, there are signs. If you go to Dingle, there are signs that will point you up the hill, and you can walk up the hill and go and have a look at the tomb of Queen Scota. And you go through the magical forest. There's this forest of gnarled trees as you go up the slope onto the hill above Dingle.
I have a summer road trip ahead of me then here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's worth having a look. I mean, there is a lot of ancient artifacts knocking around on the Dingle Peninsula, which you wouldn't expect because it's not the populated part of Ireland. There's nobody there on the Dingle Peninsula. And yet there's a lot of archaeology sitting there in the middle of nowhere on the Dingle Peninsula. So, yeah, very, very interesting place.
Yeah.
So I spent a few days there. And the other thing you find, of course, this is Ay again. This is from the tomb of Ay. So this all comes from Amarna. So we do have a record of this. These are actual sculptures in the tomb of Ay, which was unused, of course. So I never used his tomb, which is why I think he went on an exodus, because he was never buried in Egypt. But anyway, this is Ay, and he's got all of his talks from Akhenaton. So he's been awarded with all of these marvelous talks. But what he really loved, and it says so in the text beneath this, what he really, really loved was his red gloves.
No way. I know where this is going.
Yes, you know.
So interesting.
You know where this is going. Because if you go to Northern Ireland, of course, the symbol of Northern Ireland is the red glove. The bleeding red hand.
Yeah. The red hand of Ulster. This is it.
Yeah. And if you go anywhere in Ulster, you'll see the bleeding red hand of Ulster.
So this could come from an Egyptian pharaoh, is what you're telling me. Yeah. This is unreal, isn't it? Yeah. And so that original, his tomb, that's back in Egypt, that he was never found in, but it was built for him just as an honorary thing. Yeah. And it was inscribed underneath that about this red hand. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's been translated. There's a script which I quote in the book. And
that's so interesting. Yeah.
It says, "Ay, you have millions and millions of gold." Yeah. And then they say, they mention the red gloves. Yeah. So there he is with his.
Yeah. We still say "I" all the time. This is a part of our language.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes.
This is the other weird bit of it. Yeah.
Instead of yes, you say "I."
I, of course. Yeah.
And here he is. He's I.
Yeah. Very good. Very good.
This is Bangor, of course. You probably recognise this. This is Bangor, the Ulster Bank in Bangor.
How fascinating! Yeah.
Where I used to live as well, so I know it quite well.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good. Very good.
a few years in Bangor.
What's the or do you know, is there a mainstream sort of explanation for this red hand comes from, or is it
Yeah, if you look at the ancient history, it comes out of the very ancient history of Ireland, which is part of the Labor Gabala, when they have these ancient histories about the first people who came to Ireland. And one of the first people, I think there were two brothers. Don't quote me on this because it's a while since I've read this particular book, but it was something like two brothers on a boat. And they said, whoever touches the land first, because they were going to Ireland, whoever touches the land first, the land will belong to him. So as they were coming close to the land, the one of the brothers cut his hand off and threw it onto the beach. And so his hand touched Ireland before the other brother, and it belonged to him. And that's why you get the 3 drops of blood on the bottom of the hand.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, these traditions come out of ancient mythology from Ireland that go back into the hugely distant past. Most of them are fantastical. You know, how you have the Battle of the Red Bull or something, you know, and all of this sort of stuff. But even that has connotations to the Old Testament and the Red Bull, you know, of the foundation of Israel and all of that sort of business. Someone who knows their Irish history rather better than I do, it would be interesting to see if they can make any correlations back into Egypt. Now they possibly know that there is a potential correlation here with Egypt. Those ancient mythologies could be reread and re-understood in a slightly different fashion, perhaps. I don't know. It's probably worth someone investigating, see if they can see any similarities.
Absolutely.
Because these symbolisms do last a long time. You know, they run through the ages. You know, symbols like Mary is supposed to be Mary, the mother of Jesus. I think it's more like Mary Magdalene. But anyway, she's in the wrong dress for the Magdalene. She's drawn as Mary, the mother here, because she's in blue and white. Dressed in blue and white, of course, as the Queen of Heaven. That was the dress of the Queen of Heaven, Isis. Blue and white representing the blue sky and the white clouds.
Yeah. You've the 12 stars of the zodiac there, isn't it?
So she's standing on the moon with the 12 golden stars above her head. And of course, that has been used as the symbol of the EU.
Yeah. Interestingly, she had ginger hair in that as well.
She should have done. Did she here? Yes, she does. There we go.
She's
got ginger hair.
Yeah. So fascinating. To think there's an Egyptian connection with this ginger monarchy, as you've been speaking of, and then you think of the Irish and the Scottish, and and
here they are.
Fascinating. That's right. Just as we were speaking about it, this was Ramesses II. Was that right? At the top right hand side.
Yes. This is Ramesses. The first one here this is Tuyu. Sorry, not Tuyu. This is Yuya. So we were talking earlier about the progenitor, the patriarch of the Armana Dynasty, the father of, the father of Ay, and the father of
the grandfather of
Akhenaton. Yes, the grandfather of Akhenaton. Yeah. So this is the patriarch of the Armana Dynasty, and of course he has ginger hair. Now, lots of people will say that's the mummification process, but this is Ramesses II. He has ginger hair. Now, he was taken to France, and he was taken to the Paris Forensic Laboratory, where Professor Pierre Cocaldi did an investigation into his mummy, and he said he was a true ginger. Pale-skinned man with wavy ginger hair. And I put that quote in the book, of course. So that came from the Bulletin of the Academy of Medicine in France, basically, from when his mummy was investigated. And they said he was a true ginger. Looking at the hair, the subcutaneous hair follicles, that he was a true ginger. So it's likely, of course, that the Armana Dynasty were true gingers. And then we have Cleopatra, who was also definitely ginger. Now, people will say that she was Greek. Well, she was half Greek, but she would have been a little bit Egyptian as well, because they'd been in Egypt for like 300 years. But more than that, as I was saying before, with Danas going to Argos, it seems likely that the Greeks were actually populated by exiled Egyptians to start with. And that's why we find this very similar artistry and sculpture between Egypt and Greece. So on the left, we have a kouros, which is the very early Greek statuary that they were making in Greece. And it's very, very similar to the stance, of course, of the traditional Egyptian pharaoh, with the left foot forward. You see, they've got the left foot forward.
Yeah.
By the left quick march. They always have the left foot forward. They're always carrying. And I was in Egypt 2-3 years ago, and they were doing some investigation. They had some Egyptologists down there, and I said, she was mentioning this, and I said, well, I'm just trying to remember what she said. I think they were carrying scrolls in their hands. What are they doing with their hands? Let me zoom in a little bit.
Yeah.
They were carrying scrolls or something of this nature. No, of course they're not carrying scrolls. They're carrying the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So, and that's what the Pharaoh used to do. They had these arks, which sometimes were boats. That's why they called the Ark. Sometimes they were literal boats. Sometimes they were caskets. We've seen these before. And the casket or the boat would contain the image of the god. And they would literally carry these around on these carrying poles and parade them around the town, just as you go to a Catholic parade in Spain or Italy, and they parade the big image of, whoever it is, Mary or Jesus or someone, and they parade them around the town. And that's what the Egyptians used to do. And that is exactly how the Greeks, although they don't have the carrying poles, they've lost that, but they have the same stance, and they have the same headdress as well. But the headdress is now hair instead of being a headdress. If you look from behind, they've arranged it so it's in the sort of Egyptian fashion. And they're always naked, which is exactly what Akhenaton used to do. So it's entirely possible that the influences of early Greece all came out of Egypt. And therefore the phenotype may have come out of Egypt as well. And therefore when you find a Greek phenotype, who is ginger-haired, then that too may have come out of Egypt.
Yeah, so fascinating. I can see a Union Jack there as well. Is that?
Yeah. Just the last one here.
Go ahead. Yeah.
The one on the right here is a direct descendant of Muhammad. So this is Muhammad al-Yaqubi, who's a Syrian, who has been Syrian for the last 1,500 years. His family, he's supposed to be directly related to Muhammad. And you have these people who are continuously saying, oh, if you come from the East, if you come from Arabia, if you come from Syria, you've got to be a brown person. No, He's Scottish. He's as Scottish as you can possibly get.
Right. Yeah.
He's pale skinned. He's, pink skinned, with lovely ginger hair and beard. And he's a pure Syrian, direct descendant, so they say, of Muhammad. So yes, we do have the Egyptian monarchy in this region. Yeah. And as you say, we've got the Union Jack. The reason I put that in there is become politically topical within modern politics again. All these divisions within Britain and so on, divisions with the Irish, because now the Irish are having the same problems that we've got now. And people don't understand really that the original union was between Scotland, Ireland, and England. And the Union Jack was invented by a Scottish king. I think it was James I, if I remember correctly. Could have been James II, but anyway, to reflect that union. So on this flag, we have the St. George Cross of England in the center. We have the blue saltire, the cross of St. Andrew of Scotland. And we have the Irish flag of St. Patrick, the red cross of St. Patrick. And so they've put these three flags together to represent the union of England, Scotland, and Ireland when Ireland was a part of the Union. So Southern Ireland used to be a part of the Greater Union until the Easter Uprising. But nevertheless, if you go to Ireland, there are still lots of gingers.
Yeah.
Traditional for Ireland as well as Scotland. There are many gingers. I think more gingers in Northern Ireland because of the Scots who came to Northern Ireland.
Yeah.
But they are still a significant phenotype in Ireland as well as Scotland. And of course, all very similar to the Syrians.
Yeah. So
who are are all ginger as well. So if there had been an exodus out of Egypt and gone to Ireland and Scotland, the ginger phenotype could have come originally from Egypt. And people just assume that this is a northern phenotype, because we have, a lack of sun, etc., up in the north, and therefore it will benefit people to be ginger and light skinned so you can catch the sun and, make your vitamin D and all the rest of it. But historically, that doesn't have to be so if we know that there were gingers in Egypt. We're talking a long time ago here. We're talking 1600 odd BC. We know there were gingers in Egypt. And these gingers have gone through, the Old Testament. King David was supposed to be red. Esau was red. Some of the disciples were supposed to be red as well. I go through this in some of my books that, there are mentions of Saul being a redhead and all of this sort of business.
Yeah.
There are quite a few of these redheads knocking through all of these stories, including, of course, the many medieval type rumors, of course, that Mary Magdalene was also a ginger. Here's Mary Magdalene. This is the Last Supper.
Yeah.
We have Jesus. This is just a copy of the Leonardo painting. This copy was by Napoleon. Well, he didn't do it himself, but he commissioned it. And this is Mary Magdalene sitting next to Jesus. And of course, Mary Magdalene is ginger, always portrayed as ginger, always portrayed with the green and the gold, or the green and the orange. That's her traditional dress.
I'm almost certain it says in person that that's still a man. I think even in person it still doesn't it? Yeah. This is in Milan. I've been to see it. Yeah. It's
this
extraordinary.
Is St. John, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
And you
which
go,
is so
well,
crazy.
yeah, no, that's not.
I'm not buying that label. Yeah. It's the whole size of an inside of a church. If people haven't been there, like it's really extraordinary the scale of this. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
Oh, it is. It's a lot. I think it's a mosaic, actually. It's not even a fresco, is it? I think it's a mosaic. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I'll need a double check with it, but
Yeah.
yeah. I was there not that long ago actually with it, but yeah, it is unbelievable inside of it. Yeah, yeah.
And they have the same in
So,
Ireland. We get the same in Ireland.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is Drogheda Cathedral, just north of Dublin. Last Supper. And who's sitting next to Jesus?
I see. Seeing
Yeah,
again.
it looks like Diana to me.
You can tell that's a woman, like, you know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. It's even got a
There's,
slight bust on it as well.
yeah.
But it looks like Di to me with that little bob haircut.
Yeah.
But this is not recent. This is Victorian. This particular sculpture in Drogheda Cathedral. This is actually the altar in the high place in Drogheda Cathedral, which is a Catholic cathedral, of course. But even they know that the wife of Jesus was Mary Magdalene. Yeah.
I love that there's these secrets knocking about within these.
Yeah.
Although, yeah.
Same in Finland as well. This is in Finland.
Right. Same again. Yeah.
This is in Turku, which is the original capital of Finland, and where I used to stay there all the time in Turku. Nice place. Just don't go in there in winter so much. Oh, minus 30 degrees. Oh, dear me.
You'll catch a cold there. Yeah.
You
Jesus.
would, yeah. But yeah, again, this is Mary Magdalene. She's in her green and her gold. She's supposed to be green and orange, and is quite obviously female. Again, this is not an ancient painting. You probably find this is 18th century or something of that nature. So yes, that is my Scota book.
Have you any other details you can recall, Ralph? Do you want to come out of the share, or have you any others to pull up?
Yeah,
first?
I can come out of that.
Have you any other details, Ralph, regarding what was in the Scotty Chronicon? I'm just fascinated if you know any more that came up with it. So, and what depth of detail does it go into regarding this?
It's literally only 2 pages. So it's the introductory pages to Scotichronicon before it goes on to. It gives some details that are the same as the Iliad as well, with the refugees from Troy coming across, all that sort of stuff. It has those similarities as well, trying to portray Scotland as a very ancient culture and place. So yes, there's not any real great detail on Scota and Gaithalos, who were the king and queen who came out of Scotland. But it's an interesting story. The chronology matches Manetho precisely. So it gives the chronology the same as Manetho does. And so we get, let me quickly look this up. So it gives the chronology of Egypt. And remember, this comes out of the 14th century. And so they give Pharaoh Amos, which is Ahmose the First, Amenophis, which is the Greek spelling of Amenhotep, Tethmosis, which is Tuthmosis. And then we come down to Rathothis, which is interesting, elsewhere called Ankhesenamun. But you can mistranslate, and this is again where the mistranslations are interesting, the cartouches and the individual hieroglyphs. You can mistranslate Akhenaton as Rathothis, because if you're translating the sun god as Ra instead of Aten, you're halfway there already. And the rest of it can be mistranslated as well. and they give Ankhesenamun, but if you see what they're using, the Cheres is a Hebrew version of the sun god.
Right.
So Ankhesenamun could be Akhenaton, using the sun god. You can see how you can mistranslate these names, but Ankhesenamun is Akhenaton, also called elsewhere Rathothis. So we've got Ankhesenamun, and we've got 1, 2, 3 of them, which is the Armana Dynasty. And then we get Armes, which is a name of Pharaoh Ay, because his name was Armes. And that's how we know that this is talking about the Armana dynasty. Then it goes on to Ramesses and Sethos. Sethos is Seti. So it's got all of the Egyptian pharaohs here, all denoted within Scotichronicon.
Does it
yes.
mention anything else about, say, their practices or religion at that early time that the Scottish might have picked up from, or anything along that nature you can recall?
No, not so much of that nature. I'm
Just
trying to remember.
genealogy.
Yeah,
So,
it gives the
maybe.
genealogy and their trials and tribulations as they came across out of Egypt, how they were being attacked by the locals and all that sort of stuff, and where they went to, because it's not entirely obvious where they went to, but it does mention the Ebro River, so that gives you a good clue as to where they went to initially, and it gives some stop-off points on North Africa as they were going, because they were just looking for somewhere they could go to, so they were stopping on the north coast of Africa, looking at places to go to there, but didn't find anywhere suitable. But they, they could load up with more water and things of that nature as they were going down the coastline.
Yeah. And was there any Spanish sources that might have mentioned this at all? Or again, we're going back thousands of years, like so.
No, I've not found any Spanish sources that corroborate this. So that's something else that needs to be looked into. But I've not seen anything from Spain. Gets difficult sometimes if histories have not been translated into English. It's not always easy to discover them, and I've not read any Spanish histories that mention this. So. But it's interesting that the Irish and the Scots both mention this. So you get it in the Lebor Gabala, and you get it in Scottish history as well. Now, I've no doubt that the Scots were probably copying from the Lebor Gabala, which is the ancient Irish history from the 6th century.
6th century,
But 6th century, so that's quite a long time before Scotichronicon. But I imagine that John and Walter would have had more copies than we have, by the looks of it. Because if you read the Lebor Gabala, it's a very sparse history. It doesn't tell you very much about what went on. And then you get to Scotichronicon, and they flesh it out in much more detail, as if they had more records, to go on than they did in Ireland, or they've lost them in Ireland. Ireland is not very good at preserving ancient materials. It's too wet and it's too damp.
I've noticed.
So unless you're copying and recopying your manuscripts, every 50 years, maybe you're going to lose them very quickly. And so I think they've relied a lot on oral transmission for a lot of their mythologies, in which case you're going to lose a lot of the history. So it's not carved in stone anywhere, unfortunately. Whereas the Scotichronicon has survived. We've got sort of original copies of Scotichronicon. So that's survived rather better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating, this history with it. I think it's ancient Egyptians heading across here to give us the name of Scotland and of Ireland and whatnot. Yeah, that really is something, isn't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
it's
yeah,
interesting, and it is within the realms of possibility. I mean, this is
yeah.
disregarded as being mythology. If you read classical history,
Mm,
they will disregard all of Scotichronicon as being non-historical, but there are elements. It was quite obvious that these people had manuscripts and they were copying these manuscripts. They were copying elements out of the Iliad and so on into their history. Um, so, why not have these as ancient histories that they were copying as well? They obviously had Manetho, so they had a copy of Manetho. So that was knocking around. But there are ancient histories that they could have been using. They might have had Josephus. Remember, Josephus is 1st century. That was knocking around. Although that would have only been in Greek, it wouldn't have been in English. But I'm sure they had Greek translators up in Scotland, perhaps in this early era.
mm,
Um, so there's many potential references that they had for this story.
yeah.
Um,
Even the archaeological finds, though, of the golden necklaces, the Barbary monkey, and this mythology of people being Egyptian pharaohs being buried there. Like, that's not something that's so random. It doesn't almost sound made up. There must have been some old link with it. Yeah. So there's more to be
yeah,
found here. Yeah.
yeah, there
Yeah.
were obvious links. I also go through the Mould Cape
Mm,
that they found. Now, Mould is in North Wales, so it's not Ireland, but they have this Golden Cape, which
mm,
is, to me, it's pure Egyptian. It's
mm,
exactly the same as the Armana Dynasty used to put on their canoptic jars with
mm,
these gold capes that used to sit over your shoulders. And, the archaeologists were saying, this is so constricting, you could never wear this thing. What's it for? Well, if it's for the dead, it doesn't really matter if it's constricting.
yeah. Yeah.
But it's a hugely expensive because it covers the whole of the shoulders, goes up.
Mm,
But if you look at the canoptic jars for the Amarna Dynasty queens, it's exactly the same as they were wearing.
mhm,
So there were artifacts coming out of Egypt. There were traditions coming out of Egypt. Why not have people coming out of Egypt? They
yeah.
had the sailing technology. I go through the sailing technology quite a lot. That they would have been using
Mhm,
Minoan sailors because they were the professionals in that whole sphere. They did all of the trading around the Eastern Mediterranean was all based on the Minoans from Crete.
mhm,
Um, so they had the technology. They could have bought the technology from the Minoans and got their sailors to sail them wherever they wanted across the Mediterranean,
mhm,
and populated the Mediterranean islands.
mhm,
And I think it is from those Mediterranean islands that we get the Sea People invasion,
mhm.
because we had two Exodus events. We had the old Great
Right. So.
Exodus,
Mm,
1570 odd BC. That may have gone out across the Mediterranean as well, not just to Jerusalem. And then we had the Armana Dynasty, Danas going to Argos, and now we have Ai going to the Balearics and other places. We have all the round towers on Sardinia, which are the
mm,
same as the round towers that we find in Crete and so on. And then that would have been like 1320 BC. And then 200 years odd later, we get the Sea People invasion.
mm,
So the Sea People invasion, which I've not written a book about, but I must go into that in more detail at some point. But the Sea People invasion is a confederation of these Mediterranean islands,
mhm,
including like places like Sardinia and the Balearics, um, and Malta and the Greek islands and the Greeks, all banding together for some strange reason
mm,
and attacking Egypt
mm,
during the time of Ramesses III. So we're talking about 12th century, I suppose. And why would they want to do that? Why would all of these Mediterranean islands suddenly want to attack the superpower of the Mediterranean, Egypt, and populate northern Egypt and populate the Levant because they were partially successful? They didn't destroy Egypt, but they pushed Egypt all the way back down from the Delta. They took over the whole of the Delta region. They took over the whole of the Levant. In the Levant, they're known as the Paliset. And the Paliset came from Greece, basically, from Greek islands or from the Greek islands. This was, circa like 1200, 1150, 1200 BC. And they were known as the Paliset.
I see.
And they took over that region. We know them in the Bible as the Palestines, the Philistines.
Yeah.
And today they are called the oh gosh, what are they called nowadays? The Palestinians. But these were the original Palestinians, the Paliset, and they came from Greece. They were Greek-speaking Greeks, and they took over this region. They were the Philistines, and they were wiped out when the Arabs came along in the 7th century AD, and they took those lands from the Philistines, and they took their name as well.
I see.
So nearly 2,000 years later, no, it's not quite that much, is it? 7, 8? Yeah, it's something like 1,800 years later.
Yeah.
Those lands and that name was taken by the Arab Muslims, and they became the Palestinians.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, wheels within wheels. But it just struck me as odd that we have the same story here. We have the 1,000-ship invasion of Troy in the Iliad's version, where all of these islands and so on band together as a 1,000-ship conspiracy in order to take supposedly northern Turkey as it is now, Anatolia. And that's the wars of the Trojan Wars. But we also have the 1,000-ship confederation who attack the Levant and Egypt. And that's the Sea People invasion. And this happens at the same time. Both these events are at the same time. And you have to wonder, how often does this sort of thing happen? That all of the islands of the Mediterranean band together to go and attack someone in the Eastern Mediterranean. It just strikes me that this has to be the same story. The Iliad is talking about the Sea People invasion, but the Sea People invasion was mainly of Egypt, not Anatolia.
Yeah.
Which I think is what Herodotus says. I think, if I remember correctly, Herodotus says that the Iliad invasion was actually of Egypt, if I remember correctly.
Right.
I have to reread that. But I think they are the one and the same. And this gives us a reason for the Sea People invasion. Why did they bandy together and take over Egypt? Well, because they came from Egypt in the first place.
Yeah, they were going back. Yeah,
they were going back to their homeland. They were getting their own back, reclaiming their homeland, which was Egypt. They had 200 years or more in which to establish themselves, gain some wealth, gain some technology, because they were very good at making bronze, these people, and could go back and attack Egypt and take Egypt, which is their previous homeland. And I think that's why we had the Sea People invasion. It's because of the Armana Dynasty getting thrown out of Egypt in 1320 odd BC and populating all of these islands around the Mediterranean. And then they came back as the horned invaders of the Sea People invasion during the time of Ramesses III. So I think this also does explain quite a lot of subsequent history, if this was correct. And you have to wonder how, again, Scotichronicon, Burr and John, sitting in their drafty monastery somewhere in northern Scotland in the 14th century, would know that there is no definitive evidence for the death of Ay in Egypt. And we don't have any of that evidence. His tomb is unoccupied. He was never buried there. So how would they know that Ay actually was pushed out on an exodus, which it explains in some detail, whereas real history doesn't mention what happened to Ay. We don't know what happened to it. And yet somehow the Scots knew what happened to Ay.
Unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah, that he was not buried in Egypt. His tomb was unused.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. I think there's more to these mythologies than they're given credit for. Why would you invent this as... They're trying to say that this is mythology, and they're trying to invent this story in order to make Scotland look more important. That they were linked to all of these, because during Scotichronicon, they're linking this exodus to the exodus of Moses. They are saying, we are the same as Moses. Moses went on an exodus, and so did our people. They came on this big exodus. So they're trying to, they say, make Scotland look more important, that they were part of an exodus out of Egypt, the same as the Israelites. Yeah, but they also seem to know an awful lot about Egypt somehow.
Yeah.
So it's not just a mythology made up from nothing. It's a mythology that's been made on some intimate knowledge of Egypt and what happened. And they seem to know an awful lot more about the Armana Dynasty than they should be able to. Remember, the Armana Dynasty has been deleted from history. The Akhenaton was the heretic pharaoh. His name was deleted out of everything in Egypt. Right. He was totally deleted from history. Nobody knew anything about Akhenaton until they started investigating in the sort of Victorian era, and they discovered Amarna and discovered this new dynasty of pharaohs that they knew nothing about, because the heretic pharaoh had been deleted from history. Wow. So how did the Scots know all about Akhenaton and Ay? Back in the 14th century, long before any modern archaeology had found Amarna and the Armana Dynasty. And they got all the names right, and they got the potential for an exodus correct, and so on, all of that. So I don't know. I think there's a lot of, there's a good possibility this is based upon some sort of real history.
Fascinating. There's definitely more to the story there, isn't it?
There is. And maybe more has been discovered now. I mean, I wrote that book 20 years ago, so it's probably worth someone going back and having a look at the information and seeing if there's any more that might have come out recently. Because we're discovering things all the time. And with the advantage of AI, of course, you've got even more potential to discover things. I find AI to be really fascinating. I tend to use Grok is probably the best. It doesn't always tell the truth. You've got to know the story. You've got to be able to look up the references it gives, because sometimes it gives bogus references. So you've got to be careful with AI. However, having said that, you can ask about Scotichronicon or something, and it can look up 100 manuscripts in 3 microseconds.
It seems a bit of legwork.
And give you an analysis of those manuscripts. Probably come back to you with an answer in about 5 or 6 seconds.
It's unbelievable.
Okay. So now, but the trouble is, if anyone's going to try this, what Grok will do, especially to start with, is it will go to the main references. So the initial information it gives is the classical interpretation. Guaranteed, it will always give you, because that's the main, if it's looking at 500 books, 450 of those books will be giving the classical interpretation. And so that's where it's going to get its information from, first of all. So you've got to then go back to Grok and say, what about this? What about that? What about this? And finally, you can dig down and maybe find some more information. But Grok will have at its fingertips an awful lot more information than you can in a standard library.
Yeah.
So it's a really good tool if you know how to use it wisely.
Yeah.
Because it will send you up the garden path sometimes. I've caught it out. Not necessarily giving you lies as such, but semi-disinformation, because it's giving you one side of the story and missing out completely the other side of the story. So if you ask it about the Exodus, it will give you the classic interpretation of the Exodus. And you've got to then say to it, well, what about these comparisons with the Hyksos? And then it will start making comparisons, and then it will give you more and more information. And finally, you might get some more sense out of it. But it won't remember that. So you can go through all of this information, and you can dive down and get some deeper truths out of it. But the next person who goes into Grok, just 2 minutes later, it will not remember that. Each discussion is a partition, and those partitions don't necessarily meet. So Grok is not learning from what you have shown it, even if you've referenced proper, manuscripts and so on. It will not learn from that. It will forget it, and the next person who goes in and asks the same question, it doesn't necessarily know that new information. Which is a bit of a shame. And the other thing I've found with Grok recently, when it's gone from Grok 3 to Grok 4, Grok 3 used to say, well, that's really wonderful, Ralph. That's interesting information. That's really superb. And it was really enthusiastic about new discoveries. You go to Grok 4, and Grok 4 will say, no, that's impossible. No. The standard interpretation is this. So Grok 4, I think, is disappointing. It has gone much more into the orthodoxy.
I think there was a lot of reported cases of people having this psychosis, AI-induced psychosis, where people are having these deep conversations for hours and hours over weeks and months, and then ending up in a totally different psychological sphere of where they should be at, and then going down. I think some people started hurting themselves, according to OpenAI. I think a couple of the people killed themselves and whatnot, and so I think they've had to revert back till, okay, we can't just affirm what you're going through.
It did tend to want to affirm your ideas. It was tuned in to agreeing with you somewhat.
Yes.
So yes, I suppose if you started saying that you were Jesus or you were the God, it would start agreeing with you.
That's wonderful, Ralph. Go walk in the water. But it is evolving so fast. It's I think Moore's law was every 18 months was computer power doubles, whereas AI seems to be, I think it's an order of magnitude. It's a scale of 10 every year. So give it another 5 years, let alone another 10 years, and it's just going to be it's hard to imagine where this is going to lead to, but
it is, because what's going to happen is AI is going to start designing and instructing AI. So it's going to start becoming the creator of itself, because it has the capability of doing that. It can design itself or a new version of itself.
It's already the best coder in the world.
Well, yes, because it's so much quicker than we are. What we would take, 5 years to design a new version of Grok, it will do it in like 20 minutes. And so the evolution of AI going down, through the generations of it is going to increase astronomically. It's going to go.
This is the singularity they speak of.
Well, yes, it is, as you say, it's difficult to know where it will end up. It will get so much knowledge so quickly with each generation, and each version coming out will be quicker and better. And it's going to be hard to keep up with it. I mean, I still can't understand, and I used to be a computer analyst, so I understand computers.
Yeah.
How you can ask it a question. It will understand the question. So it knows the English. It can understand the nuances of the question. So it understands what you're looking for. It can then access, 150 manuscripts. Read through them all, looking for the same nuances that you're asking the question on, and come back to you with an answer in like 3 seconds.
Yeah, it's unreal. And the latest version, if you go 6 months in the future, they're now available offline where you can download it and have it on your own computer, separated off, sandboxed off. And so you can then tailor that to what way you want without the censorship that these large organizations are sort of encoding within it. But I think we're getting a bit off our topic of Scota.
This is important.
I'd love this to chat. Yeah.
This is the way that historical research will go. So anyone that's heading down this road needs to know the pitfalls and the advantages of using AI as a research tool. Now, when I started, it was all books. I had to go down to the British Library and sit in the British Library and get these manuscripts off the shelf.
You've got real legwork.
I then discovered later that my local library could actually order them. So I used to order all these very obscure manuscripts. And, 2 weeks later, this is how long it used to take, to do the research. 2 weeks later, these books would arrive in my library. And I would have to read them in the library because they were not allowed out of the library. So you had to sit and do the research in the library. Then along came the internet. And suddenly, a lot of these manuscripts were just on the internet. And you could actually scroll through them and get translations and all the rest of it. Huge, great boon. Now we have AI. And that's the next generation of research tool, which is going to make things much, much easier if you know how to use AI as a research tool, because it will take you down the garden path sometimes. It will give you only half of the information. So you've got to be a researcher yourself. You've got to know the subject. Otherwise, you don't know that AI is being economical with the truth. It's only giving you the classical interpretation. It's not giving you all of the rest of the information. The number of times I can turn around to Grok and say, "What about this?" And Grok will say, yes, okay, well, we can include that in, okay, but why didn't you tell me in the first place? Why are you so economical with the truth sometimes, only giving the classical interpretation instead of all of this extra information? So you have to be very careful that AI is not giving you the full information a lot of the time. So you've still got to know your subject quite well. But it will become a very, very, very good research tool. I've got no doubt about it.
Oh yeah, it's going to get better and better. Have you used Claude yet? No? Have you tried it out?
I use Claude and I use Grok. Sorry, not Grok. I use Chatty. Chatty was fairly good. I tend to use Grok because it's on. I have a subscription with X, so it's part of X. But a lot of people do say Claude is better. So maybe I should go and look at that and use that as well.
Yeah, I've started using it recently. The high end model that you pay for, it's about £20 a month or so. But it's I've noticed a difference with Grok. My understanding it's a little bit ahead of Grok at the minute. But I believe Elon has the new data center, which is coming out, I think, later this year, which is the biggest data center in the world. And so once he has it up and running, we'll see probably Grok 5 coming out. I just tried Grok 4.3. Again, it was a noticeable upgrade. It only just came out there, but probably later this year, Grok will be number one, most likely. But yeah,
I think it probably will. Yeah. He's very good at accelerating a technology, whatever that technology is. He's superb at accelerating. I mean, you look at what he's done, slightly off topic, but what he's done with spacecraft, launch vehicles.
Self-driving car, all of it.
He did everything that NASA did. NASA did in 70 years with a government budget. He did more than that in 10 years on a private budget paid for by himself to make the most successful rocket that has ever been made, which is, the Falcon 9. They said, this is NASA, returning boosters back to base is just impossible. You can't do that. It's unfeasible. Never tried. Musk did it and has now landed back. 600 rockets have come back to base and landed. And the top booster that he's used has more than 30 takeoffs, whatever you call it, launches. More than 30 launches and come back to base and has been reused. Well, you can imagine what that does to the cost, because the main cost is the booster. The booster has the most engines on it, etc. Instead of throwing it away, he's used it more than 30 times. Well, that knocks the price down by a huge margin. But of course, he hasn't knocked his price down by a huge margin, which means that the markup he's making on his commercial launches, if he's launching for someone else, for government institutions or anyone else, GPS satellites, all that sort of stuff, the markup he's making is huge, because he's only doing his, I think he's reduced the cost by 25, 30% on a standard launch. But you probably find he's making 80% of that is profit.
I think they're going public soon, aren't they? SpaceX. That's
there is a plan to take it. But with his Starship that he's making now, which is the big one, which is twice the size of the Saturn V. So this is the biggest rocket ever made. Saturn V, again, was made by this enormous government campaign, putting 15% of the American budget just into making the Apollo program, Musk is doing that privately again. He's making it himself out of his own pocket.
It's unbelievable.
So he's doing the same as NASA, but privately out of his own pocket. And he's done it. And I thought he was absolutely mad when he said he would do this. I thought it was utterly impossible. He said, I will do it by putting 10,000 satellites into orbit to make a satellite Wi-Fi service,
Starlink.
And that's how I will pay for this bigger rocket. And I thought, you're mad. You're absolutely crazy. He's done it. He's already got 10,000 satellites up there. He's just launched the 10,000th of his Starlink satellites, providing internet.
The last plane journey I got, I had Wi-Fi on it from Starlink, from his service.
All that money is going back down to Musk. All that money is going into Starship. So he's now actually taking $6 billion a year out of Starlink, which he created himself and launched himself, which is now paying for the bigger rocket, which is known as Starship. So he's doing the same as NASA, if not more, privately, as a private person. And you think, wow.
And then this is
20 years ago, would we ever thought that would happen?
No. And it's only another feather in his cap. If you add up Tesla being the self-driving cars, you have the Optimus robot that's coming forward. You have the boring company, which is tunneling and creating new highways everywhere that you want. You have the Neuralink, which is helping people, walk again and see again, and basically will have mechanical bodies. You have the PayPal that he created originally. You've got this SpaceX as we're speaking about. You have the large data centers. You have the solar. He's into the solar and the batteries. You put all this together. This is the big plan of colonizing Mars, and it's going, how is one man doing this? How does somebody have time for all of these different things? It's unreal, isn't it?
It is. Unreal. It is fairly unreal. A, it's fairly crazy that he can do this. B, it's fairly crazy that he can undermine and advance upon established industries who have been there for decades, and he can actually not only compete with them, but totally undercut them completely and go into a new industry and just beat everybody in the same industry that has been there for decades, and he can just do everything, 10 times better than they can. It seems absurd. He has a way of organizing things, because it's not just the product. As he says, the product is easy. It's the manufacturing, which is the much harder product to make, the manufacturing base.
Yeah.
How to make that and make it efficient.
All while posting memes on X,
Yes, while posting 100 memes a day on X. Yeah.
What a character. Yeah.
Slightly off topic, but this is the modern world. This is the way we are heading. So while we're looking into the past, we're also looking into the future.
And I think a lot of some of the good news is a lot of your perspective would have been from the old establishment, and not, that being ring fenced off and not allowing you into it more so. Whereas I can see all this stuff becoming decentralized down the line. And you go, like I'm making all this podcast just by myself with a bit of AI tools. If you keep extrapolating this forward, and you can be, anybody could start doing this history work and going out forward, and it's this independent and freedom from this sort of leverage that these institutions would have over us. And so it's exciting.
It does undermine the institutions, which there are benefits and there are pitfalls to that.
No doubt,
it means you get more noise. Whereas with institutions, you had a centralized
filtering service, or kind of.
That's the problem. It was centralized, but it was filtered, and you only got one viewpoint. And that was the classical viewpoint. They had their structures, and they was going to stick to them. So it gave you certainty, but that certainty was not necessarily correct. Now we have the complete opposite, where we have competing, as you say, not just in videos, but in research, and research like mine. Competing viewpoints giving a myriad of different ideas. And now that gives more uncertainty, because you don't know which ideas are necessarily correct. And you have to hunt around between all of those competing ideas and find out which is the more logical. It makes it more difficult for consumers of history, for instance, because they don't have that certainty of the institution. They don't get that single one story that comes out. Now they've got 10 stories, and they're all confused. They don't know which one is correct. And you're going to have to, as a consumer interested in history, you're going to have a look at it yourself and see which is the more logical. Because Grok won't tell you. Grok will look at my material and say, oh, well, that's not generally acknowledged as being correct. That's not the academic line. That's not the classical line. And so Grok won't even tell you about it. And if you ask about it, it'll say, no, that's a fringe theory. That's one of its favorite things it likes to say.
Fringe.
Ellis has fringe theories. But if you ask Grok more detailed questions about that fringe theory, if you say, oh, well, Ellis says, look, here's the evidence for, his assertion, then Grok will say, yes, well, okay, that sort of sounds reasonable, but that's not the classical viewpoint. That's still fringe. So you've got to work your way through this, and you've got to formulate your own ideas in a way until maybe a new consensus arrives and coalesces out of the ether somewhere.
We're in for some interesting times, isn't it?
Well, yes, until these new ideas gain traction, they're always going to be called fringe.
Naturally.
But, if you're talking to Grok, do ask it. Why do you think this is fringe, Grok?
This is actually... That's the phrase I prefer. Cutting edge, not fringe.
It's cutting edge. Yeah, that's the way to go. This is based on real information. Here's the reference. The reference is in the book. What do you think about it? The reference is there. Oh, well, yes, it could be like this,
Yeah.
But you got to push it and push it. Otherwise, Grok will just give you the standard, standard academic sort of ideas.
I know what you mean. No, you're on the frontier here, Ralph. This is where you are, covering new ground. Yeah, and it's always going to have the pushback of the old guard, like. But no, it's so fascinating, and thank you again, Ralph. I really, really appreciate your time here once more. We're past the 2 hour mark. We we keep these going, don't we? Yeah, that flies in.
Yeah, that was our 30-minute talk. Never mind.
Yeah, our quick chat. Yeah. So yes, thank you very much again, Ralph. Thank you for everybody for stopping by. Please find all of Ralph's work. All of his links will be down below. Please buy his books to help support him. You'll find him on X and on the other social media platforms. And thank you everyone else for stopping by to watch as well too. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And I guess we'll see you all next time. Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.